Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elron.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
In our top story, Israel has started to reopen and restart its economy. Nearly 1 million Israeli children have returned to school as the Jewish state slowly takes steps to return to normalcy. Israel's Minister of Health allowed first, second, and third graders, as well as 11th and 12th graders, to resume studies as long as the number of students did not exceed 17 per classroom. Grandparents have also been given the okay to visit their grandchildren for the first time in months. Shopping malls, libraries, and national parks have reopened, and outdoor exercise is now permitted. In another positive sign, several of the main hospitals that have been treating COVID-19 patients have closed their wards as the number of infected people declines. The Knesset said steps to gradually reopen the country would move forward as long as new coronavirus cases continue to decrease.
The Israeli Ministry of Defense has overruled the Palestinian municipality of Hebron, announcing that the Tomb of the Patriarchs will undergo a renovation, making it handicap accessible. The city holds one of the most important sites in Judaism, the burial place of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah. Hebron is known as a flashpoint city because more than 215,000 Arabs surround less than 1,000 Jews who bravely hold their ground to preserve the holy shrine. Last week, Israel's Defense Minister Naftali Bennett announced that Israel had green-lighted the elevator project. He said every person, irrespective of whether or not they are disabled, should have the opportunity to visit the tomb, which is an important Jewish heritage site.
Arabs living in the Gulf states are accusing the Palestinians of being ungrateful for decades of support and assistance. One Saudi activist created the hashtag Palestine is not my cause. And a flurry of frustrated Arabs have voiced their disappointment with Palestinian corruption and terror. One image posted depicts a Palestinian mother feeding her child from a bottle labeled hatred and treachery. Palestinians are finding themselves increasingly isolated as Arab states have begun to normalize ties with Israel, and fewer Arabs sympathize with the Palestinian cause.
Multiple airstrikes in Syria have left several Iranian military compounds destroyed and dozens of Islamic terrorists dead. The Iranian proxy army Hezbollah has suffered a devastating blow in Syria as major munition warehouses, which held stockpiles of missiles and weapons, were targeted and destroyed in the aerial assaults. Jerusalem has repeatedly warned Damascus that it will be held accountable for any actions emanating from within its borders. Israel did not confirm its involvement in the strikes, but Defense Minister Naftali Bennett released a statement saying, "We will continue to take the fight to the enemy's territory." In related news, a private intelligence firm has released aerial photographs of the destruction of an underground facility outside of Damascus, which was used by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Satellite images reveal that at least half of the compound was flattened in airstrikes earlier this month.
Israel's finance ministry announced that it sold $5 billion in Israel bonds on Asian markets. The sale was meant to help the Israeli government decrease deficits resulting from the coronavirus, which originated in Wuhan, China. This is the first time that Israel has issued bonds in the Asian markets. In March, Israel sold $5 billion worth of bonds to American and European investors. Money from that transaction was used to fund Israel's emergency bailout program for the economy. The 40-year bonds yield 3.8% interest.
President Donald Trump marked the beginning of Jewish American Heritage Month by vowing to vigorously confront anti-Semitic discrimination and violence against Jews. The president recognized the contribution of the Jewish people to the United States. He praised their spirit and resilience and celebrated the myriad of ways Jews have enriched America and the world. The president stressed that America will never compromise its steadfast support of the Jewish community, its rejection of anti-Semitic bigotry, and its disdain for malicious attacks of hatred. He went on to say that Jewish Americans strengthen, sustain, and inspire our country through dedication to family, respect for cherished traditions, and the commitment to the values of justice and equality that unite Americans of every faith and background.
An Arab man has petitioned the Israeli courts to stop payment transfers to the Palestinian Authority. Israel collects taxes on behalf of the PA and transfers this money to them to cover municipal cost and infrastructure. Unfortunately, the PA is notoriously corrupt and often uses the cash for unethical purposes. It is for this reason that Mohammed Arif Mossad asked Israel to give the money directly to needy Palestinian workers and their families. He said the PA is pocketing the funds and using them as it wishes in contravention of the law. He accused PA officials of corruption, claiming they dispersed the tax revenue to government bureaucrats and terrorists while the Palestinian people suffer.
Germany has finally ruled that the Iranian proxy army Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. This comes after years of pressure from Israel and the United States, who have warned Berlin against the threat that the terror group poses to Germany and the world. Security officials believe that more than 1,000 Hezbollah terrorists are currently operating in the FRG. The decision to blacklist Hezbollah came after Israel's intelligence organizations disclosed critical information to Munich about the terror group's activities on German soil. This included the details of Hezbollah's money laundering networks and bank accounts used by the Iranian proxy army in Germany, as well as the group's possession of hundreds of kilograms of explosive materials for use in future terror attacks.
Anti-Semitic incidents in Canada have reached an all-time high. This comes after a steady rise over the past 4 years. The League for Human Rights, part of the B'nai B'rith of Canada, recorded 2,207 anti-Semitic incidents in its annual audit for the year 2019. That number reflects an 8% increase from 2018 and shows that, on average, more than 6 anti-Semitic acts occurred every day in Canada last year. The report also notes a rise of violent anti-Semitic attacks.
A new Egyptian TV drama depicts the breakup of the United States and the destruction of the State of Israel. The science fiction series called The End is being aired during the prime time of Ramadan. The series is produced by one of Egypt's largest production companies, which holds strong ties to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The show depicts a future where Israel is destroyed, Jerusalem is captured, and the Jews are forced to leave. Israel's foreign ministry called the basis of the series completely unacceptable, especially because Jerusalem and Cairo have had a peace treaty for the last 41 years.
USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, has denied coronavirus relief to Gaza for fear the money will be used for terror. The organization has aggressively blocked relief funds to the Gaza Strip over concerns that Hamas will hijack the money and use it for further terror attacks against Israel. Hamas is notorious for using humanitarian aid to purchase weapons and to pay for the construction of terror tunnels. A senior official with the Trump administration explained that Hamas refuses to engage with Washington. It shows no interest in peace with Israel. In fact, despite the coronavirus crisis, Hamas continues to fire rockets at the Jewish state on a regular basis.
The parents of murdered American journalist Daniel Pearl have petitioned the Supreme Court of Pakistan, opposing the release of their son's murderers. In 2002, the 38-year-old Wall Street Journal reporter was kidnapped in Karachi while investigating Islamic terrorism. He was beheaded by his captors several weeks later. Pakistan convicted Ahmad Omar Saeed Sheikh for masterminding Pearl's murder and sentenced him to death. 3 of his accomplices were sentenced to life in prison. Last month, the world was shocked when a Pakistani high court acquitted the 4 terrorists and announced their impending release, claiming a lack of evidence. The Trump administration denounced the ruling, calling it an affront to victims of terrorism everywhere.
Germany's Council of Catholic Bishops has collectively admitted the Church's complicity in the Holocaust. In a 23-page confession of guilt, the clergy admitted to helping Nazi soldiers who they counseled on the front lines of the war. This comes after Vatican archives prove that Pope Pius XII, known as Hitler's Pope, had knowledge of the mass murders of Jews by the Nazis and intentionally kept information about the genocide from U.S. authorities. The recently opened records reveal that Pius was encouraged to keep that information from the Americans because it was provided by Jews who could not be trusted. Historians and researchers believe that the Vatican intentionally concealed the files pertaining to Pius's role in the Holocaust in order to protect his reputation.
The computer chipmaker Intel has purchased the Israeli-developed transportation application MoveIt for $1 billion. This crowdsourcing app allows its 800 million users in 3,100 cities throughout the world to navigate all forms of public transportation. The acquisition of MoveIt is just the latest in a series of Israeli tech companies purchased by the American computer giant. In 2019, Intel bought Hambama Labs, an artificial intelligence processor developer, for an estimated $2 billion. And in 2017, Intel purchased Mobileye for $15.3 billion.
Scientists at Israel's Weizmann Institute have discovered that comatose patients who respond to smell will regain consciousness. The 4-year study revealed that 100% of the patients who reacted to fragrances woke up. That even includes those who were classified as being in a vegetative state. This sniff test will aid doctors in diagnosing the severity of brain injuries and assist in creating the appropriate treatment plan. In several cases, the patient's response to smell was the first indicator that they would regain consciousness, and this was often measured before any other signs. The doctors involved in the study noted that the current diagnostic standard for traumatic brain injury can produce an incorrect diagnosis rate of up to 40%, leading to wrong treatment plans, including the decision to discontinue life support. The smell test can provide much-needed insight into this field and may likely become a new standard in diagnosis and treatment of comatose patients.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Please stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Dr. Mazal Shaul. She is the Executive Director of WePower. Dr. Shaul, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what is WePower.
WePower is a nonpartisan NGO that was established in 2000, and since then we are active in 3 areas to increase the number of women in the arena, in the public arena, and the political arena.
Why is it so important that women are so involved in the political arena?
Well, we think and we know that effectively, all the areas of life are in the routine, kindergarten and the shopping and the nurturing the children. So the moms then are the major, let's say, the major function in the daily life. And this is why we think that in the political arena, where we are getting the decision, where we are sharing the money, the budget, we are saying, okay, this is a budget for that, or this is a budget for that. That's why we think that it is very important that there will be women around the decision table. And actually in 2000, when Michal Yudin founded WePower, she was volunteering in WITZO, and she understood that all the rules are determined by men. There were only 9 Knesset members, women Knesset members, and she said, how come that there are no women around the decision table? And this is why we are active for that.
Today we see a lot of women in politics in Israel. We're the only nation in the Middle East that had a woman head of state, a woman head of the bank, a woman head of the Supreme Court, a woman speaker of the Knesset. Are we advancing quite a bit? Where are we today?
Unfortunately, no. Those are great examples of great women. But when we look at the numbers in the gender gap, in the global gender gaps, we are only on place 64, and we got down from 46 to 64 this year. And we see that we have only 5% of mayors, and we have only 5% Knesset ministers, women ministers, all the 72 years of existence of Israel. So we are not in a good shape. And this is actually why WePower, unfortunately, is still relevant to increase the numbers.
What about in our parliament today? What percentage of the parliament are women, and how are they influencing political decisions?
Today, in those last election, there were elected only 30, which is 25%. And still, though those 30 women are actually part of big parties. And unfortunately, again, because you are part of a big party, you are kind of under the agenda of the big party. And the gender gap and the gender matters are not really the top issues that women deals with. And this is why we believe that as long as there will be more women in the Knesset, more issues of gender issues like violence in the family, like equal salaries, like equal representative will be kind of treated, let's say.
We live in a very dangerous neighborhood, and the 22 Arab Muslim countries around us, women are treated very poorly. In Iran, women are treated as property. In Yemen, women are not allowed to vote or have a say. Is WePower involved in working with the Arab communities as well?
Yes, what WePower is doing actually are three areas. First of all is raising the awareness. So we do a lot of campaigns and a lot of workshops and conferences around those subjects. We are doing a lot of legislation. And the third one is training. The third area and the major work is training. And the training are for Orthodox and for Arab society and for Ethiopian society and all kinds of society. And what we do is we train women to activism, community activism, plus teaching them gender matters and political arena structures and those subjects. And what we see that 25% of our graduates are going into politics after the conference, after the program. So in the last municipal election in 2018, we understood that we really need to work with the low social, or let's say the low social or the peripheral societies, and therefore we established a program that is called Your Voice Matters, where we first speak on activism, and only in the next step, when they graduate the initial leadership skills, we train them for politics.
We have complete freedom and freedom of votes and freedom of society. Why don't you think women inherently get more involved in the political process? Why do they need to be pushed?
There are, we identified four barriers. I will say I will edit 5 because recently I got familiar with the 5th one. And the barriers are concerned, first of all, the balance between family and careers. And this is a volunteer careers that you don't get any money for that. So this is more, they have the career, they have the families, and they have the public volunteers. So this is first one of the barriers. The second barrier is knowledge. Women will not get into something if they don't feel they know enough about it. And this is why actually the programs are very, assist them a lot, because they need the knowledge to know. The second thing is that they have barrier in using their network, their connections. Okay, a man will go out of the army, he wants to go to politics, he will pick up the phone, vote for me, give me money, and this is the 5th one, the money, the issues of raising money, which is a barrier for women more than men, and the networking. Another thing that they really need is support and networking. As long as they will create a very fond environment around them and people that they will support, they will support them, then it will be easier for them to get. And all of that we are given an answer in the programs.
Dr. Shmuel, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I will say to the audience that it is very important. I'm calling all the women to get involved in their societies and to go to a very high and political position, to approach us if they need help, and to say this is your life and this is very important for you to be involved.
Dr. Shmuel, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
next, the Return to Zion with Karen Hayasod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayasod. I'm Sam Grunberg, World Chairman of Karen Hayasod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. The story of the Exodus boat is one of Karen Hayasod's most famous operations. Listen to the first-hand testimony of one of the brave women who fulfilled her biblical destiny by coming home.
As the dark clouds gathered over Europe, the door to the land of Israel was not yet open. Under Arab League pressure, the British ruthlessly restricted Jewish immigration. Karen Hayasod, alongside Jews already in the land of Israel, banded together and launched a clandestine naval operation, codenamed Aliyah Bet, to save their brethren from the clutches of Nazi Germany and bring them to Israel.
כשנגמרה המלחמה התחילו להתארגן יהודים לנסוע בחזרה לפולניה. ההורים שלי החליטו שהם רוצים להגיע לארץ. התחלנו לעבור את כל אירופה לכיוון מרסיי.
With careful organization and ingenuity, these brave souls defied the British authorities. Makeshift, rickety boats set sail from ports across Europe, transporting a wretched human cargo of men, women, and children desperately seeking refuge.
הגיע יום שאספו אותנו והתחלנו להתקדם. זה לקח אולי יום וחצי עד שאנחנו צעדנו בתוך מרסיי, וככה לאט לאט הגענו לאוניית האקזודוס.
Upon its arrival to the port of Haifa, the ship was deported back to Europe, thus making it a symbol of the many hardships Jews had to face during the time of Aliyah, immigrating to their historical homeland.
ראינו את אוניות הבריטים, המשחטות שלהם, מסביב כמו דגי טרף כל הזמן. כמו שאנחנו נסענו, הם נסעו. ואז הגיע היום, ראינו שהאוניות מתחילות להתקרב אלינו, וגם ראינו את חיפה, את האורות כבר. וכולם התחילו לשמוח מאוד שרואים אורות, אבל אני מבינה שהיו אנשים שהבינו שמתחיל קרב וזה. הם התחילו לשחק כדורגל, האנגלים עם האונייה. אחד נתן דחיפה ימינה, השני שמאלה, והאונייה התחילה להתפרק כמו לגו. בחיפה הורידו את האנשים, עשו עליהם פליט עם כל הכעס שהיה להם, והעבירו אותנו לאוניות, ל3 אוניות. זו הייתה אוניית אסירים, הם זרקו את כל התרמילים, אנשים נשארו כמו שעלו, בלי בגדים, בלי שום כלום.
Undeterred, the overcrowded, unseaworthy vessels of Aliyah Bet continued to challenge the blockade. Young Jewish fighters, aided by their non-Jewish sailors, succeeded in bringing more than 70,000 Jews home to the land of their forefathers in more than 100 vessels.
עם ישראל צריך להיות כולו בארץ ישראל. זה ראינו בכל הדורות.
Those who made it ashore were swiftly smuggled into the future Jewish state by daring activists from Karen Hayasod and elsewhere. Evading capture, the new arrivals were taken to kibbutzim and other new communities to live as free Jews in their own land, fulfilling the dreams of countless generations before them. And in doing so, they brought to life Zechariah's prophecy, "Not by might and not by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord."
זה המקום היחיד שאתה יודע שאתה בארץ שלך, על הקרקע שלך, כמו כל עם נורמלי אחר.
To this day, Karen Hayasod is helping Jews around the world come home with the help of Jews and non-Jews alike.
Let's bless Israel together.
Now's the time for you to get involved. Assist Karen Hayesod to raise the necessary funds in order to bring Jews yearning for their homeland back to Israel. Your donation can help fulfill the biblical prophecy today. To donate and get information, visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Greetings to all of you from Jerusalem. Defeating a global pandemic demands a global partnership. That's why I want to commend EU President Ursula von der Leyen for bringing together countries from around the world to combat the coronavirus. Israel, like all countries, has been greatly affected by it. Fortunately, our casualties thus far have been relatively low. This has been the result of early action to contain the disease, advanced technology to locate those infected, first-rate medical professionals, and a disciplined population that largely adhered to the mitigation policies enacted by our government. But as we all know, the corona epidemic is far from over. At best, we're only at the end of the beginning. And like all countries, Israel is now trying to find the right balance between protecting the health of our citizens by preventing another spike in infections and enabling the reopening of our economy. But ultimately, to ensure both the public health and national prosperity, we must all work together on improving diagnostics, accelerating therapies, and ultimately developing a vaccine. I'm confident that Israel's leading research institutions, its world-renowned scientists, and our unique culture of innovation can enable us to play an important role in advancing solutions on all three fronts. And that is why Israel is pledging today $60 million to these efforts. We hope to work with other countries to leverage our unique capabilities to find solutions for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Karen Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Rebecca Rand reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all your Israel updates.